It's early morning in Africa. Nature has painted her sky with the orange hues of a new day, and life begins to stir. This could be any day here in the remote bush of Kenya, East Africa, but it isn't. Here in the desolate, man-forsaken territory known as the Kora Game Reserve, over 200 miles from Nairobi, Kenya's capital city, it's the last days of two determined men and a story that stretches back over a quarter century. A story that brings together the large cats of the wild with their most dangerous predator, man. It's such a man, a hunter turned game warden turned conservationist, who has been living out his life in harmony with the wild lions and leopards of Africa. His name? George Adamson. Now over 80 years old, George Adamson is known by the local tribesmen as Baba Ya Simba. George Adamson is father of the lions. It was his wife, Joy Adamson, who in the early 60s authored the book Born Free, which later became a highly successful film. This story brought to the world an intimate portrait of a man and a woman and the wild animals they would devote their lives to protect. Through their love for the big cats, the Adamsons became the first human surrogate parents of orphaned lion cubs. Left in the wild unprotected, the cubs would have been killed by larger predators. To protect them, the Adamsons constructed wire-fenced compounds. These became home for the lion cubs they then raised to maturity. When fully grown and able to fend for themselves, the lions were returned to the wild. 25 years has passed since Elsa, the Adamsons' first lion, was raised and released. George Adamson remains in the Kenyan bush. This is his story. For nearly half his life, George Adamson has been a renowned wildlife conservationist. His home is the Camp of the Lions in the Kora Game Reserve, Kenya, East Africa. Adamson's younger partner and understudy is Tony Fitzjohn, whose occupation, like Adamson, is wildlife conservation. His home, the Camp of the Leopards, is also in the Kora Game Reserve, 7 miles from Adamson's. Brian Moon, an American wildlife artist and filmmaker, had earlier stayed with George Adamson for several weeks to paint a series of lion pictures. The two became good friends, and a year later, Brian received a somewhat troubled letter from George.
I'm 80 years old now, and for me, time is running out. Before it does, someone should tell the story of the past 25 years. Conditions have changed dramatically, and this may be the last days of my wildlife preservation program here in Africa. Come out again and tell it the way it really is before it's too late. Your old friend, George Adamson.
As Brian prepared to leave Nairobi on the last leg of his journey to the Kora Game Reserve, he was troubled by the urgency in George's letter.
I had never known George to be so distressed. His letter gave me the sense that his remote world was somehow on the edge of irreversible change.
For Brian, this is a journey of friendship. For 21 days, he and the film crew will share the life and work of George Adamson. Across the East African plains, they will seek out the lions and leopards that are Adamson's wild family. And briefly, they will relive the painful memory of Joy Adamson's death. Flying over Africa, one is struck by the size of the enormous continent. Here on the equator, one gets but a glimpse of its vast reaches, an area 3 times the size of the United States. The equator dissects the triangular 500-square-mile Kora Game Reserve in one of the most arid regions of East Africa. On the north, it's bordered by the largest river in Kenya, the Tana River. From the air, one sees no herds of roaming beasts thundering across the landscape. This is no man's land, an isolated terrain covered with thorny acacia and tangled commiphora bush. Quite suddenly, George's camp appears below. The aircraft approaches a dirt strip carved out of the bush. The resident wildlife make it apparent that this is the Kora Game Reserve. As Kora's wildlife signals the arrival of the film crew, George arrives at the airstrip, where the sign under a nearby tree warns the casual intruder. This is lion territory. After a brief welcome, supplies from the plane are hastily unloaded. Even today, there are no roads in the Kora Game Reserve, only rough tracks hacked out of the wilderness. It's a jolting 4-mile journey from the airstrip to the camp of the lions, and one cannot help being struck by the barren beauty of the reserve. A 12-foot-high wire fence surrounds a dozen doorless thatch roof huts. This is Campi Ya Simba, Camp of the Lions. It steams in the 100-degree heat of the clearing which surrounds it, and where the lions freely wander. Safety and shelter is inside the fence. There, the lion's roar is only a noisy intruder. The camp is home for George and about half a dozen local tribesmen who assist with the camp's upkeep and George's conservation programs. Here at the camp, virtually isolated from the outside world, a radio provides the only lifeline. Huts in the camp are ingeniously simple. Walls are wire mesh covered with sacking and coated with a watery cement. Interwoven palm leaves cover wooden poles to form the roof, and inside, mosquito nets drape over military-issue cots. The largest hut is the camp's mess hut, lounge, and general gathering place. The camp provides food, care, and shelter for more birds and other local wildlife than it does for people. Here, there is protection for all living things, large and small, a haven in the midst of a hostile environment. Even newcomers to the camp, like the camera crew, are readily accepted. Lacking most of the normal conveniences associated with city living, life at the camp is remarkably simple. The camp's toilet is a good example. Palm leaves laced through a small wire fence provide a degree of privacy. Inside, an inverted jawbone of an elephant is supported over a trench. The kitchen sports an age-old facility, an open fire. It's the camp's microwave, toaster, and oven. The cook is Hamisi, who joined George when the previous cook was killed by a lion, an occupational hazard at Kora. For all the residents, daily life cannot survive without water, and there's no water in the camp. A trip to the river 5 miles away is part of the camp's routine. Large 50-gallon drums are used to transport the precious commodity back to the camp. Here, the Tana River itself is as tawny as an old lion, with the soil washed from the dams upstream. A watchful eye needs to be kept for hippos and crocodiles, as both have been known to kill people as well as lions. The Tana River, besides bordering the reserve and providing water for the camp, is the only local water supply for George's nearest neighbors, the nomadic Somali tribesmen and their herds of goats and cattle. But it is here that one man's interest in lions and another's in cattle come face to face. The Somalis have roamed East Africa for hundreds of years. In this arid land, their lives depend entirely on the herds of cattle they bring to the river's edge each day. Any predator that threatens these herds is dealt with swiftly and fatally, and the vultures are never far away. The Tana River provides little separation between the cattle on one side of the river and the lions who roam the reserve on the other. Each morning, some of George's regulars make a repeat visit. They all seem to know that George is a soft touch for an easy meal. Later, Boldy, another frequent visitor, stops by to visit the father of the lions. Boldy is the offspring of one of Adamson's released lionesses. A loner by nature, Boldy often leaves her pride to visit George. She also is looking for a ready meal and sees a prospect in the guinea fowl near the camp. There is one golden rule to follow when feeding meat to a lion by hand. Don't forget to let go of the meat. In fact, George had made it a rule never to touch the lions once they'd been set free. No one in the film crew showed any inclination to challenge such an obviously commendable guideline. The lioness Boldy is well named. She has no inhibitions when it comes to her daily meat intake. And the vulturine guinea fowl are but one more elusive prey. Their protection is a vibrant alarm system which anticipates every move of the lioness and sends them shrieking and flying into the trees and onto the fences with each attack. Finally, a dispirited Boldy settles down to wait for a better opportunity while Brian captures the moment in charcoal. That afternoon, George and Brian sit down to talk.
Over the years, then, how many lions have you raised and released?
Well, they're around about 30, but then, of course, their offspring, which must run into nearly 100, I suppose.
You were literally the grandfather of all the lions we're seeing around the camp every day.
Well, that's what the local people call me. They call me the father of lions.
Father of the lions, Papa Simba, right?
Papa Simba.
Papa Simba. You had a problem, as I remember yesterday, because the lions we saw were fairly close to a village, weren't they?
Yes, well, that's the big problem at the moment is that they're close to the boundary of the eastern boundary of the game reserve, and they've been going over and attacking domestic stock. That can lead to a lot of trouble. I mean, trouble for the lions themselves because they can get poisoned or speared by angry tribesmen.
Yes.
As George and Brian talked about the lions in the reserve, it became clear that George was deeply troubled. The last lioness he had raised and her pride had not been seen for several months. There was a growing concern that they might have wandered off the reserve, or worse, been poisoned by local tribesmen. In Africa, the lion's fight for survival is endless, as it is for all living things. Without man's intervention, nature herself maintains a complex yet balanced order that affects the largest to the smallest of life forms. Even the scorpion, seemingly designed to exist under the most adverse conditions and well-armed, faces natural enemies. The long-necked guinea fowl delights on a midday meal of scorpion, and although respectful of the fast-moving tail, dispenses quite quickly with formalities and finds itself dining on what would appear to be an acquired taste. The African hornbill also shares the appreciation for a scorpion meal, but exercises greater caution before actually consuming its prey. In a repetitive back-and-forth motion, it almost seems to be reassuring itself that there is little doubt its victim is completely dead. Scavengers, like the marabou stork, are integral to the African life cycle. They are the ultimate benefactors of each and every hunt. Large, patient birds, they find it easier to wait for a kill than to exercise their own predatory skills. These less than handsome creatures provide a vital link in the life cycle and serve as nature's highly efficient cleanup crew. Boldy sat in the afternoon sun relaxing before the night's hunt began. It's hard to imagine that such a beautiful and majestic creature is capable of killing George or others around the camp. Tony Fitzjohn is George's protege, and Tony has painful memories of a lion's deceptive tranquility. He had been working with George for over 10 years when he was attacked by one of the lions, an attack that very nearly killed him.
And before I knew where I was, I'd come to him. My head was in the mouth of a big lion. And he proceeded to sort of chew me up quite seriously. And I obviously thought I was a goner. And then when one of the staff saw what was happening and yelled for George, George came out with a stick. I was being dragged off to be finished off in the bush by this lion. And George bluffing and shouting and running towards the lion with a stick was enough to save my life. And George sort of dragged me back into camp and said, and I put my hand up to my throat and it disappeared inside. And I thought, oh dear. And I said, George, am I dying? He said, well, I think you probably are, but we'll have a look at you first. You know, George is like, doesn't it?
Tony recovered from his wounds and returned to Kora. As George grows older, he realizes that his work can only continue in the hands of this younger man.
Today is his 41st birthday.
Yes, right. He will carry on your work for you,
Well, that's what I hoped, yes.
And will he be able to carry it on here? Can you see that happening?
Well, I don't know. It's possible that he may have to find somewhere else to carry on this work.
Since then, you and George have almost a father-son relationship.
Well, I mean, it was inevitable, I suppose. I mean, George and I are very different people from the outside, but from the inside we both feel the same way about what we're doing, and he was obviously the mentor and I was a young man with the energy, and we both loved the same things.
Locals don't call you Tony. What do they call you?
Well, they used to call me Simba, which means lion, and now they call me Papa Chui, which is father of the leopards.
Tony's work parallels that of George's at his own camp 7 miles away. Accessed by a series of rough dirt roads cut out of the bush, Campi Yachui, Camp of the Leopards, lies at the foot of Kamunyu Rock. There, Tony raises leopard cubs, and when they're old enough to fend for themselves, returns them to the wild. A radio transmitting collar helps track these nocturnal and reclusive creatures throughout the boundaries of the reserve. But George and Tony are fighting time. After a lifetime of selfless devotion, these are the last few days left for them and their work here at Kora. Since Brian's last visit, George's program of lion conservation has been terminated by the Kenyan government. The reason cited? No further need for this kind of wildlife program in Kenya. Termination of Tony's work was even more final. In addition to his leopard program being shut down, he has been ordered to leave Kenya, and that means leaving George. The film crew's arrival in Kenya ironically coincided with George and Tony's last days together.
I would like to have done maybe 50 to 60 leopards within the next, 3 or 4 years, whenever the supply was available, because a lot of the time people don't know what to do with these leopards.
Are you going to be able to do that?
Unfortunately, the government have now closed my operation down, and it looks like I won't have much longer to stay in Kora. So I have to find a place to go where I can take the ideals and the practicalities of those ideals that George and I both believe in. It was a bit sad after 15 years here.
Tony shares the same apprehension for his cats as George. For 2 months, he hasn't seen the leopard named Kimunyu, his first leopard to be released at Kora. Because of Tony's concern that the cat may have wandered beyond the reserve's boundaries, a search is organized. But finding one reclusive leopard in 500 square miles is, at best, a risky, time-consuming task. Yet for these men, every member of their wild family is important. Fortunately, Kimunyu is fitted with a radio transmitting collar. These collars allow Tony not only to keep a watchful eye on his released leopards, but to learn more about their life in the wild and how they survive in the barren African wilderness. The film crew proposes to fly in a small plane to aid in the search. Tony quickly jumps at the idea and fits the aircraft with a receiving device tuned to the frequency of the collar. Tony takes off to make low-level runs across areas of the reserve most frequented by the leopard. Persistence pays off when a faint response is detected from the transmitter and a location plotted on the map. After landing, Tony sets off in search of his leopard with a portable tracking device in one of the Land Rovers. The leopard, Kimunyu, has been raised by Tony as a cub and released when she was old enough to protect and fend for herself. But the Kora Game Reserve has no boundary fences. The only natural border is the Tana River. Animals, poachers, and Somali tribesmen with their large herds of cattle drift in and out of the reserve at will. Protecting the reserve's wildlife is nearly impossible. While both men fear for the safety of their big cats, this is the price of freedom in the wild. Beyond the reserve's borders, any wildlife attacking Somali cattle will be poisoned by the tribesmen. As the search continues for Communio, Tony is ever aware of the constant threat to his and George's work. Communio is Tony's first release and probably the very first leopard ever to be raised by humans and turned back to the wild. The last time Communio disappeared, Tony found her snake-bitten and dying in a cave. Although medical treatment saved her, the dangers in the wild, even for a leopard, are endless. Finally, on the side of a large jagged outcrop of rocks, the signal from Communio's collar indicates she's very near. Tony cautions the crew to keep a safe distance, as she's attacked people before. Yet he seems unconcerned for his own safety. Communio's survival and that of Tony and George's other cats is the final measure of their work, a lasting reward for their dedication and the difficult, solitary lives that they live. The return drive to camp illustrated the wide variety of wildlife in the reserve with whom Communio must coexist. Leopards and lions are natural enemies. However, when the leopard Communio followed Tony back to camp, a rare reunion of the two wild animals took place. Although a fence separated the two, the leopard and a young lion called Bugsy exhibit an unusual relationship that can only be attributed to a common upbringing by George and Tony. The young lion cub, Bugsy, was abandoned by his mother, but luckily he found a new home at the camp of the lions. And one more semi-permanent resident found refuge and a new lease on life. Already at 9 months old, his natural hunting instincts begin to show as he tracks one of the cameramen and exhibits his displeasure. When asked about his wildlife program, George is reluctant to accept the government-imposed ending of his life's work.
And Bugsy, the young lion Bugsy, is what, 8 or 9 months now?
Yeah.
Is he the last lion that is going to be raised and released by you, or are there others?
Well, officially, yes, but I mean, on the other hand, if, for instance, I find an abandoned cub in here, yes, I would naturally take it over and try to rehabilitate it back to the wild. Yeah.
George talked freely about his experiences over the past quarter century, and finally the conversation led to the subject of his late wife. Joy Adamson had accompanied her game warden husband on his early expeditions across Kenya. Together with local guides and supplies carried on mules, they visited some of Africa's most inaccessible regions. Joy's early chronicles of their travels provided the background for a book about their first adopted lioness. They named her Elsa. It was the experience with Elsa that gave birth to Joy's first literary success, Born Free. But Joy's life was to end in tragedy.
Your wife, Joy, met a very tragic death, George. What actually happened?
My wife was murdered.
Is that right? What, in her camp?
Yeah. Near her camp.
I see. Who did that?
Was one of the Turkana employees.
There was an irony that George, having spent his life in the bush with wild animals, had lost his wife not to a man-eater, but to a man. Joy's death marked the end of a series of books about the couple's special wildlife programs and left George, a naturally reclusive man, without the ongoing focus of world attention. That day, Brian and the camera crew left Kora with George headed for Meru, the final home of Joy and Elsa, her beloved lioness. They share the same grave, a place long since overgrown and lost somewhere in the Kora Game Reserve. From the air, it seems this barren place hasn't changed much over the centuries. But for George Adamson, it's a landscape full of memories. And now, in the last precious days of his work with lions, George has decided to seek out Elsa's 25-year-old grave. It was here that his wife Joy's ashes were spread only 5 years ago after her death. The journey was to prove more challenging than expected. The ever-changing African terrain would hide the grave and give few clues to its location. George was filled with mixed emotions as the plane landed near his old camp. The search for Joy and Elsa's grave meant trekking on foot through dense bush country in the unrelenting heat of the midday sun. For 2 days, the crew, led by George and his African guides, crisscrossed the equator half a dozen times, traveling hundreds of miles by truck and on foot. Impenetrable terrain made the journey even more difficult. Many years had passed since anyone had seen the lost grave, and there was no guarantee the search would be successful. George and the trackers were armed, for this was country known to be occupied by armed poachers, and any confrontation with them could mean fatalities on both sides. They moved slowly and carefully, disturbing a variety of wildlife as they pushed their way through the bush. But they had a feeling, a sense of being close. Then, quite suddenly, it happened.
Is this the real thing? Is this Elsa's grave?
Yeah.
Terrific.
You see, someone's removed the plaque. There was a bronze plaque there. That's gone.
Well, it's right by the river, the way you said it would be.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I didn't think we'd find it. Taking us 2 days and a couple of 100 miles. Just didn't think we'd find it.
Yeah.
It looks in pretty good shape, though, except for the bronze
Of course,
plaque.
it's all overgrown now.
I suppose.
We did have it cleared at one time.
When were you last here, George?
Well, in 1961.
So that's more than a quarter of a century ago. That's a
Well,
long
I
time.
came again in 5 years ago when we put Joy's ashes here.
Did Elsa die right nearby?
Yes, just my tent.
Oh, you were with her then?
Yeah.
Was the brass plaque here on top?
Well, you can see where it was because
Oh, yes.
it was cemented in.
Is there anything then to identify?
Well, after it was stolen, we had a stone
Oh, there's something here.
inscription.
Oh, there's an inscription.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's beautiful. There's Elsa, it says.
Yeah. January 1956 to January 1961.
She was only 5 years old. That's not very old, is it, for a lion? To die? What did she die of?
Well, she had a form of tick fever called babesia.
Oh.
And had we known it, if he could have gotten an injection of a drug called Beronel, it would have killed her.
George and Brian leave the gravesite, deeply saddened this might be the last time any man would ever visit the final resting place of Joy Adamson and Elsa, the lion she loved so much. As they tracked out of the bush country, George and the crew are startled by a small herd of white rhino grazing peacefully in the bush. And they're even more surprised to see that these endangered animals are accompanied by a Kenyan army unit. The peculiar sight is soon explained. Apparently, these are the last 5 white rhino in Kenya. Severe poaching has now made it essential to guard these lumbering creatures day and night. Already, George had been away for nearly a week, and he was anxious to find his pride of lions, the last lions that he would ever release at Kora. As they returned to Kora, George's anxiety was tempered by his memories of Joy. Brian and the crew were again struck by the beauty and vitality of the African landscape, a fitting final home for Joy Adamson among the creatures that she loved and worked so hard to protect. The next day was Brian and the film crew's final day at Kora. They left camp mid-morning. It was already over 90 degrees as they headed off down the river road in George's Land Rover. The Pride had been sighted near a Somali village near the edge of the reserve, a dangerous condition for both lions and villagers. One could never be certain of finding the lions, but George was an experienced tracker and knew well how to read the story in the sand. He recognized Koretta's prints and concluded she had been there in the last 6 hours. They arrived at the sandbank by the Tana River only to startle a marabou stork that had been looking for breakfast. George didn't seem hopeful of finding the Pride today and seemed concerned that the Pride might have wandered off the reserve for the last time. The crew was surprised when George decided to use a bullhorn to call Koretta, one of the lionesses, in the hope that she was in earshot.
Come on! Koretta!
No lions, at least not here. Had his Pride moved beyond the protective borders of the reserve? They drove on, hopeful that they might find them 4 miles away at another place they'd been known to visit. They finally arrived, weary from the rough drive. They had found them. George's pride of lions were only 7 miles from camp. Brian and the crew watched as George fed them. These were not tame animals, but wild African carnivores that fed off the land. Yet George seemed unconcerned. These were his lions, and probably the last with whom he would share this special relationship.
My son Christopher and Arthur Gibson, the cameramen on the crew, had discussed many times how we would film the lions up close. We originally had designed a specially constructed cage from which to film the big cats, reducing the danger to the film crew, but Christopher had another idea. He wanted to film them from George's perspective, but that meant walking up to them with a camera and George at his side. Christopher described the feeling of walking up to a pride of lions in the wild this way.
I had the feeling that my own fear was the only danger. I drew a sense of calm from George as the big cats came towards me. They seemed much larger at eye level and equally uncomfortable at my presence. George had told me lions know. They can feel if you're afraid.
I joined Christopher and George after a while to experience for myself the awesome majesty of the creatures. I was deeply moved as I stood amid the lions, an experience hard to describe with words alone.
Brian, Christopher, and the rest of the film crew returned to Camp Simba, exhilarated from the afternoon's confrontation with the lions. It was the climax of their journey. As Tony attempts repairs, the playful antics of Bugsy are a welcome departure from the day's high tension. Brian and the crew share in the fun.
Living with George and Tony is a rare experience, but it is Bugsy, more than any other contact, who most touches our emotions and reaches our hearts. Bugsy is today's youthful Elsa, playful, full of mischief, a naughty boy too lovable to scold. The highlight of our visit is a playful rough and tumble with Bugsy. At 9 months of age, this lion cub is already 200 pounds, with teeth and claws to match. Yet he shows remarkable restraint as he wrestles Christopher and I. The lasting impressions Bugsy makes are emotionally far greater than physical.
Brian and the crew's last night at Kora is spent watching a melting African sun slip into the heat of a clear equatorial night. George, eager to leave the film crew with one last memory, locates the bullhorn and calls Boldy. Suddenly, outside the camp in the shadows, invisible if not for the lights of the camera, appears the lioness Boldy. Ever responsive to George's call and always hungry, she moves in and out of the lights, pacing. As she enjoys a midnight snack, she seems almost indifferent to human presence. Like a sentinel, it's as if Boldy, a loner by nature, recognizes that same quality in George and has come to assure him he isn't alone. It is a quarter century since the Adamsons first broke all the rules. The forecast by experts that a lion raised by humans would never survive when returned to the wild has long been proven inaccurate. Today, the descendants of Adamson's first lion, Elsa, roam freely across the Serengeti plains. In their isolated sanctuary, with a threadbare operation, Adamson and Tony Fitzjohn have fought poachers, drought, disease, and near-poverty conditions to replenish Africa's wildlife. But for George and Tony, the future is unclear, and the questions remain. How can two men who have spent their lives saving and protecting Kenya's big cats be suddenly told that they must stop? Will the growth of civilization, even in this desolate area, take its toll? And must the land once reserved for the animals now make way for man? Inevitably, we would all lose. There is no happy ending here. The life's work of these two men is about to end. Perhaps Tony can win the support of a different government and continue George's work. But for now, all that will remain are the lost graves and overgrown camps surrendered to nature. And, at least for a while, a few more lions and leopards living free.
As promised, we are here with Brian and Chris Moon, the producers of Father of the Lions. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. First, let's bring ourselves up to date. What of the preserve? I presume, from what we learned of the film, that that's closed. What about the other cast of characters?
Well, Tony Fitzjohn's leopard Kumunyu is still living free in the Kora Reserve. The story on George's last Pride of Lions is much more tragic. Within a week of our filming them, this is the pride we had filmed in the open, including Baldy, the loner. Within a week of our leaving Kenya, they were all killed by Somali tribesmen, so they're all dead.
What about the rest of the game there? Are they, with the preserve closed down now, are they fair game, so to speak? Can anyone come in and shoot them?
The whole area has now been overrun by Somali tribesmen. And once upon a time, as a preserve, it was designed to try and keep those people out and allow the animals to grow up in a natural habitat. With the Somalis in there now, we have the classic confrontation, the conflict of man and animal, and the fight for a small area of land. And as far as George and Tony are concerned, Tony has now left. In fact, I just got a letter yesterday from him from Africa. And Tony has now left the Kora Game Reserve, packed up all his belongings, taken down his camp, and is seeking sanctuary in nearby Tanzania to continue George's work.
Continue the cause, but in a different site.
Exactly.
What about you gentlemen, you mysterious gentlemen, two men from Edina? How did you get caught up in this dramatic, this very remote adventure? Why, in the first place, did you accept George Adamson's invitation?
Well, I got to say the story backs up about 4 years ago. I wrote to George that time I wanted to go and paint a series of lion pictures, and there aren't too many lions in Minnesota.
We should point out that Brian is a wildlife artist. I think that's the genesis of the...
Yes, there aren't too many lions in Minnesota, so
that's right.
I rationalized if I could find George Adamson, I could find lions. He knows more about it than anyone else. And I had an invitation to go and stay with George, so at that time, about 4 years ago, stayed with George at his camp, did a series of paintings of his pets. And later, his associate, Tony Fitzjohn, came back and stayed with us in Minnesota and learned to fly out of Flying Cloud, incidentally.
For what, was there a purpose in this?
Yes, there was. Tony's concept of protecting the reserve, it's 500 square miles, bear in mind. There's only 2 of them, and at that time, a handful of soldiers. His concept was to overfly the reserve, to spot the bandits from the air and call in his troops by radio.
And poachers.
Poachers and bandits.
I see.
And so, but he needed a license, so he came and stayed with us for a couple of months and learned to fly here.
Oh, for heaven's sake. Then
we built an audiovisual show and sent him around the States and Canada to raise money. And in fact, an airplane was donated to them. And Tony is using that airplane now to fly to Tanzania, and we'll use it in Tanzania.
Christopher, a remarkable man, is a musician, a musicologist almost, in that he devised, composed the music, and indeed played it for this program, but had never before, professionally at least, in a professional way, handled a camera. We were all, I think, moved at one point in the film when we see that lion striking out at that, but not a budge from the camera. There was no lurching of the camera. How long did it take you to learn how to operate this kind of sophisticated equipment fearlessly, I might add?
It's a double question, really. How long
Yes.
to operate the equipment, and then how long to overcome the fear? It's much practice went in flying in, and you can see the footage in the film when we're flying in over the bush towards the camp, and that's probably the first footage I had shot with a portable Betacam, which is what we were using. The fearless part was a more complex question. I think that came from George. George had such a calm about him. I mean, you can imagine the man walking through a pit full of snakes.
Is this the British Reserve we hear about?
Well, you see, when we were standing out in the open with George, and these 5 lions were confronting us, and you know, and we thought, oh, this is really, this is the end. And then we said, well, George has been doing this for about 30 years. He's got to be good for one more day.
What about with the white rhinos, those 5 white rhinos?
There was an interesting scenario there. These were the last 5, as it said in the film, left in Kenya with their guards. I went up to them and I said, is it okay if I film these rhinos? And they said, yes, but you should probably stay away from the front of them because they have sort of front vision. As long as they don't see you in front of them, they'll just keep merrily along their way. So I'm shooting them, and I took off my zoom lens, put on the wide angle, which meant that everything was seen further away, so I had to get much closer to it. I put the wide angle on. I went up to the rhino. I just had to get a front shot, so I pop around the front. Here we are shooting these white rhino, and the rhino turns his head, and his horn is rubbing up against the lens. Then he starts stumping his hoof, and he's obviously getting ready to charge. The soldier gives him a butt with the rifle and move away.
That didn't produce a laundry problem within you at all?
No.
Is this, are we dealing, gentlemen, here with a sad story? Is this the end of it? Does George Adamson feel that all his 25 years of compassion and hard work for this cause is down the drain? Is it an exercise in futility?
No, I don't think so. If you talk to George, he's a very stoic character. He doesn't give up at all. In fact, during the conversation, I asked George, is Bugsy your last lion? And he said, well, officially yes, but if I bumped into one that needed help, he's never going to give up. But of course, his work isn't going to die either, and I think Chris can explain that better.
That's part of the reason that we wanted to do this film, is to bring to the world the incredible struggle of this man, or really this team, in Africa, how single-handedly they're trying to replenish the wildlife supply. And with George now, towards the end of his years, Tony is the spearhead, the figurehead, the person who's going to carry on that work. And we're very hopeful that the Tanzanian government has expressed their support for the work. And we're hopeful that that the whole program and George's whole concept of wildlife rehabilitation will continue there.
Have you had any indication, any hint from the Tanzanian government that this might come to pass?
Well, yes, actually, Tony showed us a letter from the Tanzanian government, from, I think, the head of the conservation department, inviting Tony to go to Tanzania to establish a rhino breeding and raising and rehabilitation program. And I believe, if I recall correctly, they've set aside 1,000 square miles of virgin territory for that purpose.
They said to Tony, they said, pick which area you want. I mean, this is an unprecedented kind of offer from a country to say, pick out 1,000 square miles. So Tony spent a lot of time flying around trying to find the most ideal area that would be far enough removed from man and allow him to do the work.
Well, then we end this program and we end this discussion on a sense of hope. Christopher and Brian Moon, congratulations on a remarkable work, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Father of the Lions is brought to you in part by Donald Wiesner.